We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Daled Amud Beis in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 44b. The Mishnah continues that we have guards that are standing by the war in order to make sure that people don't run away. Why? Shetchilas Nisa Nefila, because the beginning of running away is actually the downfall. Rashi over here notes Shetchilas Nisa Nefila. The Gemara Parach Gemara will ask on this line, Ipcha miboile. It should actually be the opposite. Shanisa Hitchilas Hanafila. That running away is the beginning of the downfall. That's how it should say it in the Mishnah. In any case, the Mishnah continues Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Nos Yisrael Lifnei Plishtim. It says that Yisrael ran from before the Plishtim. V'gam Magefa Gedola Haisabam, and it says there was a great plague on the nation. Ulahalan Huomer, and it says further, Vayanusu Anshe Yisrael Mivnei Plishtim Vayiplu Chalolim V'gomer. It says the Anshe Yisrael, the people of Israel, they ran away from the Plishtim and they fell. And so you see this idea that running away, fleeing, is the beginning of the downfall. And the Mishnah continues, B'amed devarim amurim, when is all of this true? B'milchamos or reshus. Everything we're talking about is true when you're talking about a voluntary war. Aval b'milchamos mitzvah, but if you're talking about a milchemes mitzvah, a war that is a command, an obligation to go to war, hakol yotzin. So in that situation, everyone goes out to war. Afilu chasan mechadaro, v'kala mechupasa. Even the chasan from his room, even the kala from her canopy, they all join in the war effort. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, B'amed devarim amurim b'milchemes mitzvah. When is that true? By a milchemes mitzvah. Aval b'milchemes chova, there's a difference between a milchemes mitzvah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a war that is a mitzvah, as opposed to a war that's an obligation. And so he says, by a milchemes chova, hakol yotzin, that's when everyone goes out to the war effort. Afilu chasan mechadaro, v'kala mechupasa, even a chasan from his room, and a kala from her canopy. Rashi says, B'amed devarim amurim, when is this true? The chozer min hamaracha, meaning when do we say the person can return from the front? V'yesha ein anzazin mimikomon, and there are some that don't even have to help at all in the efforts. B'milchamos or reshus, that's talking about wars that are voluntary. Avol b'milchamos mitzvah, but in a war that is a commandment, kagon kibush haaretz, kibush Eretz Yisrael, meaning like the conquering of Eretz Yisrael, b'mei Yoshua, like in the days of Yoshua, hakol yotzin, then everybody has to go out and join the war efforts. Rabbi Yehuda says, and Rashi says, mefarish b'Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion will be explained in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, Ma'ika bein Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. What's the difference between the opinion of Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah and Rabbi Yossi HaGlili in the Mishnah? They both seem to say that if a person is afraid of the averus, of the sins that he has committed, so then he has an exemption from the war. And the Gemara answers, Ika beinayu, there's a difference between them, avera derabanan. Let's say the person only commits an avera on a derabanan level, and Rashi explains, avera derabanan Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. According to Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, afilu avar al divrei sofrim chozer. Even if the person violated a derabanan, he returns from the war. Well, Rabbi Yossi, but according to Rabbi Yossi, ad sheyavor al dvar Torah, he has to violate a doraisa dumya de almana l'kohen gadol. It has to be similar to a prohibition of a widow to a kohen gadol. Kagon shenasa de iko isur. Again, talking about a situation where he married her, where there was a violation. So again, the machlokas between them is what would be by an avera midrabanan. And the Gemara continues, Keman Ozla Hadatanya. Who does the following brisa go according to? Sach bein tefillah lo tefillah. Let's say a person talks between one tefillin and the other tefillin. Aveira hi biyado, that's considered a transgression. V'chozer aleh meorche amalchaman. He returns from the war. That's considered to be enough of an aveira that he returns from the war. And the Gemara says, Kaman, who does that follow? Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. That follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. Rashi says, Sach bein tefillah lo tefillah bein hanachas tefillin shel yad le tefillin shel rosh, meaning he talks between putting on his tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh. Sach means sipur, he talks. Aveira hi biyado, so that's considered an aveira. Rashi says, Im lo chazer ubirich, if he doesn't go ahead now and recite a bracha again. That's what it says in Meseches Menachos. It says that if he talks, so he has to make two brachas, lo sach mevarich achas. But if he doesn't talk, if he doesn't interrupt, then he just makes one bracha. And the Gemara continues, Man tana lahad tana rabbanon. Who's the author of the following brisa? Shama kol kranos. It says if the person hears the sounds of the trumpets, v'yarsi, and he trembles, hagafas trisin v'yarsi, or he hears the shields banging together and he trembles, or tzechtzua charava. So let's say he hears the sharpening of the swords, umayim shosen al birkov, and he has urine coming down on his knees. Again, he's very afraid. Chozer, in all of these cases, because he's so afraid of the war, so he returns, he's exempt from the war. And the Gemara says, Kaman, who does that follow? Lema Rabbi Akiva, hivalo Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. Let's suggest that it's Rabbi Akiva who says that the pasuk is talking about someone who's actually afraid of the war, and that's the person who's exempt. And it's not like Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, because Rabbi Yossi HaGlili says the pasuk is talking about Averis. And the Gemara says, in this case, Hafilu Rabbi Yossi HaGlili mode, in a situation of fear like this, even Rabbi Yossi HaGlili would admit, Misham dechsiv v'lo yimas es levav echov kil vavo, because the pasuk does say that he shouldn't cause the hearts of his brothers to melt like his own. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'haya kechalos hashotrim v'chulu," And the Gemara says, Hai mipnei shetchilas nisa nefila. Why does the Mishnah say that the beginning of fleeing is the downfall? It should be the other way around. Mipnei shetchilas nefila nisa. It should be that the beginning of the downfall is when you run away. Mi boile. That's what the Mishnah should have said. And the Gemara says, you're right. Ema, rather, you should say, the Mishnah means to say, mipnei shetchilas nefila nisa, that the beginning of the downfall is when you run away. And the Gemara continues at the Tudats. The Mishnah said, it says, when do we talk about these exemptions? That's by a Melchemes or Rishus. And the Rabbanan say that by a Melchemes mitzvah there is no exemption. And then Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says something that sounds similar, but he says by a Melchemes mitzvah, so then we say there's an exemption, but by Melchemes chova, by an obligation, so that's when we say that there's no exemption. So the question is, as we're going to see, what's the difference between an obligation and a mitzvah over here? And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Rishus de Rabbanan, what the Rabbanan referred to as a Rishus, Zuhi mitzvah de Rabbi Yehuda. It's the exact same case. That's what Rabbi Yehuda refers to as a mitzvah, meaning the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda are only arguing about what we call a particular case. Do we refer to it as a Rishus, or do we refer to it as a mitzvah? And the Gemara continues, mitzvah de Rabbanan, Zuhi chova de Rabbi Yehuda. What the Rabbanan refer to as a mitzvah, that's what Rabbi Yehuda calls a chova. In other words, there's no practical machlokas in terms of when do you return from the war. That everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that in situations of rishus, you have these exemptions, and in situations of mitzvah or obligations, you don't have these exemptions. The only machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda is there's one particular kind of war, which we are about to identify in the Gemara, where there's a machlokas. How do we refer to that kind of war? What do we call that kind of war? The Rabbanan call it a rishus, and Rabbi Yehuda calls it a mitzvah, and the only nafkamina is whether we apply the rule of ha'osek b'mitzvah, pater min ha'mitzvah, as the Gemara now explains. Amar Rava says, Milchamos Yoshua l'chabesh. Let's say you have the wars of Yoshua to conquer the land. Divrei hakol chova. Everybody agrees that's called an obligation. Milchamos Beis David l'Ravacha. Let's say you have the wars of the house of David in order to make the land of Israel larger. Divrei hakol rishus. Everybody agrees that's called a rishus. Ki pligi, what's the whole machlokus? L'mu'ute ovdei kochavim de lo leisi alayu. Let's say you're going to war in order to lessen the amount of idol worshippers that are around, in order that they don't attack. So in that situation, how do we refer? In that situation, what do we call it? Now, everybody agrees that in that situation, there is going to be an exemption from the war in that situation in the various scenarios, but what do we call that kind of a war? Mar kari le mitzvah, one master calls that kind of a war a mitzvah, umar kari rishus, and the other one calls it a rishus. And what's the difference? Nafkamina, the difference is laosek b'mitzvah shapater min mitzvah, that if a person is performing a mitzvah, there's a general rule that he's pater from doing another mitzvah. So the question is this a mitzvah that we apply the rule of osek b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah? And Rashi explains, Ki pligi Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan b'mitzvah u'rishus. When does Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan, when do they argue in terms of calling it a mitzvah or calling it a rishus? To lamar pater min mitzvah lamar chayiv, that according to one you're going to say that's considered a mitzvah, you're pater from other mitzvahs, and the other one says no, it's called a rishus and you're not pater from other mitzvahs. So that's b'melchamashi lamu'ute ovdei kochavim de lo leisu alayu. That's specifically by a war where you're trying to lessen the amount of idol worshippers, that they shouldn't attack us. And again, that's the situation where Rabbi Yehuda refers to that as a mitzvah, and the Rabbanan refer to it as a rishus. Hadran aloch mashuach melchama. We will return to you parak mashuach melchama. This is the end of the 8th parak of Meseches Sotah. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And please take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the 9th parak of Meseches Sotah. And the Mishnah says, Egla Arufa, the procedure by the Egla Arufa, where they decapitate the calf. This is talking about where they find a dead corpse, and they have to measure to the closest city, and they go through the procedure of Egla Arufa. So B'lashon HaKodesh, that which they say, it has to be said in Hebrew. Rashi says, Egla Arufa B'lashon HaKodesh Ne'emeres, we say it in Hebrew, meaning Masha Zekeinim Omrim, meaning when the elders, they have to make a statement, they say, Yadeinu lo shafchu, we're not the ones that spilled this individual's blood. V'hakohanim Omrim, and the Kohanim, they say, Kaper li'amchol Yisrael, they say, forgive Klal Yisrael, B'lashon HaKodesh. All of this is recited in Hebrew. Huzkaku min haTorah. That's the requirement from the Torah to say it in Hebrew. And the Mishnah continues, Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ki motzei cholal ba'adama v'yatzu zekeinecha v'shavtecha. It says that your elders are going to have to go out. Shlosha mi bezdin hagadol shabirushalayim hayu yotzin. The Tanna Kama says it's 3 of the judges from the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. They're the ones that go out for this procedure. Rabbi Yehuda says chamisha. It's 5 of them. Shenemar, like it says, zekeinecha, it uses the word zekeinecha. That's shnayim. That means 2 judges. V'shavtecha shnayim, and then it says the word shavtecha. That's another 2 judges. V'yein bezdin shakal, and you can't have an even number of judges on a bezdin, and so therefore mosifan alei and od echad. So therefore we add one more, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda says it's 5 judges. Nimsa tamun begal. Now let's say you find the dead body and it's buried in stones, or toli be'ilan, or it's hanging from a tree, or tzafal pnei amayim, or it's floating on the waters, lo hayu orphan. So in that case, they don't break the neck of the calf. You don't do that procedure of the eglo arufa shenemar, because the pasuk says bo adama in the earth, velo tamun begal, and not buried in stones, no fell fallen, velo toli be'ilan, not hanging from a tree, besada in a field, velo tzafal pnei amayim, and not floating on the water. Nimtza samach l'sfaro l'ir sharuba ovdei kochavim. If they find the body near the border, or near a city that's majority of idol worshippers, o l'ir she'ein ba bezin, or near a city that has no court, lo hayu orphan, so then they don't break the neck, they don't do the procedure of egel arufa, ein modedin ela l'ir she'yesh ba bezin. You only measure to a city where there is a court. And the court here that we are referring to is a city with a court of 23 judges. And the Gemara says, Maiko Amar, what is the Mishnah saying? Meaning, where does the Mishnah learn out the idea that it has to be in Hebrew from this pasuk? Amar Rabbi Avo says, Hachi Kamar. Here's what the Mishnah is saying. Shenemar vi'anu v'yamru, because the pasuk says vi'anu v'yamru. Ulahalan hu amar vi'anu halaviyim v'yamru. And then by the description of Hargrizim and Harevel, it also uses a similar language. Ma aniya, just like the word aniya, ha'amur lahalan b'lashon HaKodesh, which is said over there, is talking about in Hebrew, afkan b'lashon HaKodesh. So too over here, it is in Hebrew. And then the Mishnah goes on as follows, V'seder egla arufa keitzad. And what is the procedure of egla arufa? Ki motzei chol al ba'adama, when you find this corpse, v'yatzu zekeinecha v'shavtecha shlosha mi bezin hagadol sheb'Yerushalayim hayu yotzin. It says your elders and your judges have to go out, and that refers to 3 judges from the bezin hagadol, from the Sanhedrin. In Yerushalayim, they're the ones that go out. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Chamisha v'chulu. Again, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, it has to be 5 judges from the Sanhedrin. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, v'yatzu zekeinecha v'shavtecha, zekeinecha shnayim, v'shavtecha shnayim. The pasuk says zekeinecha and shavtecha. Zekeinecha is 2 judges, shavtecha is 2 judges. Ve'in bezin shakal, and you can't have a bezin that's an even number. Mosifan alei and od echad. So we add one more. Harekan Chamisha. That's a total of 5 judges. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says zekeinecha shnayim. Zekeinecha just means 2 judges. V'yein bezin shakal, and you can't have an even bezin. Mosifan alei and od echad, so we add one more. Harekan shlosha. That's only 3 judges according to Rabbi Shimon, not 5. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon nami haksiv v'shavtecha, but Rabbi Shimon also, what does he do with the word v'shavtecha? Hahomi boy leilam yuchadin shev'shavtecha. What that means is the distinguished of your judges, meaning they have to be from the great Sanhedrin. For Rabbi Yehuda, where does he learn that they have to be from the great Sanhedrin? Mi ziknei zekeinecha, could have just said ziknei, and the fact that it says v'yatzu zekeinecha, it adds letters to the word. So nafka, that's where we learn out this idea that it has to be from the distinguished, from the great Sanhedrin, from the distinguished of the judges. For Rabbi Shimon, but Rabbi Shimon responds to that, because of Rachmana ziknei, if the pasuk just said elders with the word ziknei, havamina afilu ziknei hashuk, I might just think elders from the marketplace. So it had to say zikeinecha anyhow. So because of Rachmana zikeinecha, so that's why it has to say zikeinecha. Because of Rachmana zikeinecha, but if it only said zikeinecha, havamina afilu sanhedrin katana, I would think even a smaller Sanhedrin. So because of Rachmana v'shavtecha, so that's why Rabbi Shimon says that's what v'shavtecha is for. Lemiuchadin sheb'shavtecha. Again, the distinguished of your judges, it means the Sanhedrin Gedola. For Rabbi Yehuda, now Rabbi Yehuda, he says back, Gomar ziknei mi ziknei ha'eda. We learn out ziknei, we learn out a gezer shav of the word ziknei from ziknei ha'eda, and that's how we learn. Ma'alahalan miyuchadin shebe'eda, just like over there we learn that it's the distinguished among the congregation. Afkan miyuchadin shebe'eda. So too, over here it has to be the distinguished ones from the congregation. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Yehuda learns out that the judges have to be from the great Sanhedrin, mi ziknei ha'eda, from Gzer Shava, from ziknei ha'eda. To smichas par helam davar, ziknei ha'eda, that's written when they bring a carbon, let's say the entire tzibor sins by mistake. And so therefore again, Rabbi Yehuda, vayasr le'shavtecha, Rabbi Yehuda has the word shavtecha, it's extra, lahavi ochnayim, and that tells us there's an additional 2 judges, that there's a total of 5 judges. But the Gemara continues, if that's the case, Igomar, if he's learning from a Gzeira Shava, so Ligmar Lakula Milsa Mehasam, he could actually learn the entire thing from the Gzeira Shava. And Rashi explains, Ligmar Lakula Milsa Mehasam, da Rabbi Yehuda Hasam Nami Chamisha Kamar, because Rabbi Yehuda happens to hold by the Smichas Par Helam Davar. In that case, when they're leaning on the carbon, that also is talking about 5 judges. V'yolef Lamikrai V'Parakama de Sanhedrin, that's learned out from Psukim in the first parak of Sanhedrin. So if he already has this Gzeira Shava, so he can already learn out 5 judges from that Gzeira Shava. Ligmer Lakula Milsa Miyasam. He should learn it all out from over there. And if that's the case, Zekeinecha v'Shavtecha Lamali, then we're back to this question: why do we need the words Zekeinecha and Shavtecha at all, according to Rabbi Yehuda? And so the Gemara says, Ella, rather vav v'shoftecha l'minyana. Rather, it's the extra vav in the word v'shoftecha. That's where we're learning out that there has to be 5 judges. Rashi says, Ella vav v'shoftecha l'minyana kolomar lo gomer gzera shava. The Gemara is now going back and saying, no, really Rabbi Yehuda does not have this gzera shava. Ve'itzrich shoftecha l'sanhedri gedola k'Rabbi Shimon. And the word shoftecha really is used for the same thing that Rabbi Shimon uses it for. It's to tell you that the judges have to come from the great Sanhedrin. And so where is Rabbi Yehuda learning that there has to be an extra 2 judges? That he's learning from the vav of v'shoftecha. That's l'minyana. That's for the number of judges for Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon will respond to that, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph.